do you develop software that's easy to use? Especially when you're talking about a pediatric population, you cannot have something that looks complex. It needs to look almost like trying to capture gamification as much as possible in that process is a nice way or is an easy way to engage. One of the things that we have is an augmented reality-based software that's supposed to measure a range of motion. Now, when you have rare diseases or you have situations, one of the things that we work in is a lot of in the rare disease space where the population is genetically impaired and they are in the pediatric space, whether it's lysosomal storage disorders or FOP diseases. And what we find is that giving them something that is easy and clear to engage with, so the user interface, the UX, the user experience is something very important, and that's something that you should keep in your mind as you're doing it, as you build more software as a medical device.
Great. I may come back to you in just a moment, but I want to talk to Janene here for a second, and I'd like to hear your perspective as a clinician and on how digital health products are adopted and what the obstacles are among the clinical population.
Sure. Well, first I just wanted to say thank you to you all for being here and all the companies that pitched, because I'm usually the rare person that's supporting neonatal device development in the room, and it's so lovely to be in this group of people. I think the hard thing is that neonates and pediatric patients are often the forgotten patient in a way, and that they aren't the forefront of everybody's mind. So they aren't the ones that device innovation is really occurring for, or really focused on. Digital health is hard in hospitals, and bringing it into hospitals is very difficult. I'll let you talk more about EMR integration, but the sales cycles are long. We heard 18 months. I've heard 18 to 24 months for startup companies to be able to get into hospitals, and we only adopt a couple technologies a year, if that. So those technologies truly have to meet a need for our patients, for us, and they truly have to have value. So add value to the system, add value to our patients, and add value to us as providers as well, which is a really tricky combination to start to meet. I also work at Stanford Biodesign, and it's a need-based innovation process that we teach to try to inject value into these conversations early on, and to try to think about how we can meet those stakeholders' needs. But it's a challenge. We see a lot of products come through that just aren't meeting a need that we identify with. So I would encourage everyone to have those conversations really early and truly understand them, and start to look at things like U.S. News and World Report. What drives people to adopt different technologies? What drives us to want to improve that aspect of patient care? And what type of impact can you have? The technologies in general that we look for involve, the bigger the problem, the better, because you're working already in a small population. The bigger the population, always the better. The more focused that you can be will definitely take you far, but really have a big impact. And if you can have a bigger impact on these patients, that's something that we're always excited to see.
What's been the hardest, the biggest step that you've had to make, the biggest impediment as an innovator?
As an innovator, so I also have a women's health company that focuses on birth control pill management and helping women and teenagers prevent unplanned pregnancies. So there's about 1 million unplanned pregnancies for women every year in the United States for women who are actually on birth control pills, and 110,000 of them are teenagers from 15 to 19, which is just kind of staggering numbers to me. Sometimes it's convincing people that that's a problem. Sometimes it is just getting out there and hitting the pavement, being able to raise money, and figuring out your path forward. So we're actually a class 1 device now, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later, and then are going to work to build additional claims from there. But it's a fun space to be in.
Did you find any specific challenges in dealing with teenage women versus adult women in terms of developing your interface or the software? Was that something that was a consideration?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have hardware case that connects to an app, and then They inform each other about pill-taking behavior and then pregnancy risk. And we initially were coming up with a bunch of designs to talk about, human factors and UI UX. We interviewed a bunch of women who are my age and on birth control pills, and we're like, oh, it'd be great. We'll just stick it in our phone, and we'll have something that's in the back of your phone, and it'll always be with them all the time. And then we talked to a bunch of teenagers, and I found that they changed their phone case about every couple of days. Which was slightly shocking to me because I have the same phone case when I buy the phone, and it like rapidly breaks, and then that's when I know I need a new phone. So that design got thrown out pretty quickly, and so we really had to make a design that was able to integrate for all women across the lifespan. And so teenagers were the one that opened our eyes to the way we actually needed to design the device.
So form integration hardware with software becomes important when it gets to human factors.
Yes.
Patient population
Yes.
you're dealing with. So Shireen, let's turn to you here. Now you manage informatics across a pretty big institution. From your perspective, what's the biggest barrier in terms of getting some new package adopted?
I think it's been the silos in care between technology and clinical care, between the patient, the provider, and the community. So there's so many silos. A lot of the barriers are because of HIPAA regulations, other regulatory issues. But my 14-year-old, for example, can do much more with software in our house to get information, even health information, than I can do as a clinician in a hospital-based setting. And we've really tried to change the way that is. Looking at, from a very primary perspective, taking evidence-based medicine from large clinical trials and being able to decrease that knowledge translation gap. So I really like the title of this panel, Hope or Hype. I'm really on the hope side. I mean, I really see this as a wonderful device technology to embrace and just really implement in the clinical setting and shift the paradigm of care for children. And I think it's both very exciting on the implementation side, the adoption side, and really working together on the, with the industry as well to expand this. And relatively simple. So traditional knowledge translation, Elias Serhouni a few years ago at the NIH said 17 years, and really true from the time a clinical study is published in a really good journal to the time it's implemented. When we started this work in the late 90s, looking at large trials on how to manage children with traumatic brain injury, we had similar issues, came up with algorithms, predictive modeling, clinical decision support, published them, got no uptake from providers, even though they were published in really good journals. When the EHR came, it was usually looked at as something that's obligatory for clinicians. We use it, it's sometimes even a hassle. It's even difficult. Even though it's fast, it seems like it would be modernizing. It's created a lot of barriers as far as time.
I was one of those people.
Increase the time of care.